Welcome, everybody. This is the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley, and every week we bring you the stories of people who make lives of others better locally, globally, and digitally. Rotary International is over 1 million people in over 36,000 clubs all over the globe, and we subscribe to the motto, service above self. The idea is that by gathering together and sharing ideas and interests and talent and treasure, we can find ways to do some really, really cool things at small, large scale, and just make that kind of impact that is exciting for all of us, helps us kind of find the joy and meaning in life. To that end, we share stories, and we share stories of people doing all sorts of interesting things. And you've probably heard of a number of different organizations that end with things like, Without Borders and, things like this. And these are great crowds. Today, you're going to learn about Talent Beyond Boundaries. And this is one that really, really speaks to that issue of boundaries and borders. And speaking is Betsy Fisher. Betsy is the U.S. Director at Talent Beyond Boundaries. She is also someone who likes sports and attempts gardening and all of these kinds of things. But we'll focus on the stories of the people that her organization is making a difference for all over the world. Betsy, what a pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley.
Great. Well, as you mentioned, I'm the U.S. Director of Talent Beyond Boundaries. By training, I'm an immigration lawyer, and I've spent several years working helping refugees relocate from countries where they're living in legal limbo to places where they have long-term safety. So at the moment, I'm advancing that through refugee labor mobility, this idea that refugees can access long-term safety simply by recognizing their skills and talents and opportunities to contribute to workforces. I want to share a little bit about that today, and we'll make sure to leave lots of time for questions, but also please just jump in. So first, I want to tell you about one of the people we've worked to connect with an employer. Hamza was displaced from his home country and wasn't able to use his skills as an engineer. He was raising his family not knowing what their future would be. And he heard about Talent Beyond Boundaries and thought it sounded kind of different because he wasn't likely to benefit from programs that are based on need. He had some things going for him that meant that he would likely be ineligible for humanitarian programs. He registered with Talent Beyond Boundaries, and we connected him with an employer called Sigma Point, which is actually based in Canada. And they had a lot of needs and were struggling to hire locally and thought that Hamza was exactly the kind of skill set that they needed. So they connected, and Hamza is living and working in Canada. His family will become Canadian citizens, and that's exactly what we do globally. My work is focusing on this in the US, but we have programs in Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and in several countries in the EU, in addition to the US. And the idea is that refugees have skills, employers have workforce needs, and we connect the dots. That is really as simple as that. We're creating ways for refugees to relocate simply by recognizing the skills, talents, and contributions that they have to offer. So far globally, we've worked with 230 companies to hire. I think we're now significantly north of 650 people. But that doesn't include the families. So all told, we've assisted more than 2,000 people to relocate to long-term safety, which is really exciting. So the how do we do this? How do we find people? How do we find companies? We have some software called the Talent Catalog that our team developed in-house. And it's software where individuals can register their skills and experience and their interest in relocating internationally. As of last month, it was over 106,000 people and across all skills, all trades, all occupations, all levels of English, sort of any background you can imagine is likely to be represented here. I'm doing some looking around for a program that I'll describe in a little bit, and found that there were several hundred people with STEM-related PhDs who are displaced from their home country and who are looking for opportunities to relocate, in addition to healthcare professionals and people in many other areas that align with current U.S. workforce needs. Um, for the employers, we find people who reach out to us because they need workers. Like, that's the most frequent way that we find people is employers who are looking to hire local staff and who aren't able to do that. But once they hire, we've found really high rates of satisfaction. As you see, over 93% of people retain for more than 1 year, and employers seem very pleased with the results. So I wanted to talk about a couple of the things that we're doing in the US, and see if this sparks any questions or ideas from listeners and viewers over the coming weeks. Um, so three things we're working on in the US, very briefly. One is called Welcome Corps at Work. This is a brand new program. The US government recently launched a program called Welcome Corps that allows ordinary citizens to step up and to support refugees to come to the US. It's really exciting. I was just at an event earlier today. Yesterday was World Refugee Day, and so there are a series of events where I'm located in the Twin Cities. More than 17,000 people just in the state of Minnesota have signed up to welcome a refugee in their community, which is incredible. And perhaps some of the people watching this have already heard about this. Welcome Corps at Work is under that Welcome Corps umbrella, and it provides an opportunity for employers to step up and to engage while solving their own workforce need. So the program starts when an employer steps forward and says, we'd like to hire someone. And they give us a job description. They tell us what they're looking for. We go to this catalog of 106,000 people and say, who meets these requirements? Put forth a list of people who seem to meet those criteria. The employer goes through their normal hiring process of interviews or skills evaluations. And if that person is offered a job, they're then referred to the U.S. resettlement process, so the standard refugee resettlement process. And if they're successful, they'll eventually be relocated to the U.S. and welcomed by community sponsors in their community. So it's a three-way match between employers, community sponsors, and refugees. We think this is an incredible program that doesn't have any costs to the employer. There's no financial costs. It is an uncertain and a long processing time, but I'm sure that there are some viewers out there who think of some businesses that they're connected with or people in their community who might be interested in this program. We think it's a really exciting opportunity. The next one is a program that we haven't launched yet, but that we're really excited about and we think has just a huge amount of potential. We're calling it the Displaced STEM Professionals Initiative. I mentioned that we have hundreds of people who have registered, who have really outstanding credentials, who have PhDs, publications, people who have led the cell phone network upgrade for an entire country, like really strong talent that would, I think, fit well in green jobs, green transition, emerging technologies, and semiconductor and data science roles across areas of growth in the U.S. economy. And our idea is that these people are obviously desirable in the U.S. workforce, and the obstacle is that they're outside without without work authorization, and so they're waiting for an employer to take a chance on a really long and uncertain wait time. What we want to do is to start the visa processing through a visa pathway that doesn't strictly require a job offer. So we'll provide them with the financial support to start the visa process in the belief that when this level of talent has work authorization, that U.S. employers will jump at the chance to hire them and will then be willing to pay the costs that would allow us to sponsor a second cohort of PhDs in the future. So we're excited about this. Again, we're at really early stages on this. So if people have ideas of employers, ideas of the kinds of talent that would be helpful in the future to your own industries or careers, or ideas on people who might be interested in funding and establishing the initial capital pool, we'd love to connect. And then the last thing that we're excited about is thinking about how we fit in to the bigger refugee space. I mentioned we have 106,000 people. Many of them will never be considered for a refugee resettlement program that's based on need. Every year, about 1/10 of 1% of the number of refugees in the world are resettled. The US is hoping to resettle 100,000 people, 125,000 people this fiscal year. It seems like we'll come somewhere close to that between now and the end of the fiscal year and September 30th. But there's over 40 million refugees in the world, over 110 million displaced people in the world. So we think it's really important that we think about all of the available solutions to help people who have been forced to leave their home to reach long-term safety. So if we have information about a huge number of people, how are we making sure that we're connecting them to other resources? I've done some just initial pretty basic Boolean searches and have identified dozens of cases where people have expressed that they have US citizen relatives or German citizen relatives. And those people might be eligible for yet another pathway. We have refugee resettlement, we have labor mobility pathways. Maybe we should be working closely with other providers to identify people and to share information across. And I think that is work where our tech team can be building out chatbots to ask some pretty basic questions. Family reunification is a question of who are your family members, where do they live, what's their legal status. That's about as complicated as it needs to be. And then also doing some analysis of the existing data that we have to identify people. So we think we have a huge amount of growth potential by automating some of this work, by supporting our team to build better software tools that can help us identify and connect with other pathways as well. So these are three of the things that we're working on, working to connect people with employers through refugee resettlement, trying a super innovative program for people with STEM PhDs, and trying to think about how our work connects with other pathways. What would the ways to get involved or to support us be? So a few ideas. One is if you are, or if you're connected with a business that has workforce development needs, let us know. We're happy to talk. We know we're not the solution for every workforce challenge. But if we're the solution for you, it's a great solution that also helps a displaced family. So share the word with employers or others who have workforce needs. We're a 501(c)(3) that runs on donations. We, of course, receive contributions from the employers who hire with us in many occasions, from foundations and from governments. But we can very much always use additional support. And then it's possible that something that I've said has really sparked some interest or idea from someone. And so if you have ideas or an interest in getting involved in our work, we're also happy to be in touch. And our website for any of these avenues is talentbeyondboundaries.org. I'm not in any way offended for if someone calls us Talent Without Borders or Talent Beyond Borders, but our website where you will find us is talentbeyondboundaries.org. And I want to close with a slide showing 4 of the people who have benefited from our programs, who have relocated to Australia, Canada, Australia, the UK, and who have gone from a situation where they didn't know what their future would be, what kind of legal status their kids would have if they would be sent back to harm's way, and who now have both a good job and a legal status and a future for them and their families. So we're, again, super excited for the opportunity to present, and happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful, Betsy. Thank you so much. I'll ask that you stop sharing. Perfect there. And what we'll do is we'll introduce the people who are part of the recording today. From our club, there is in Houston, Texas, Roy Olson. All right, thank you. Shags in Walnut Creek, our paella master. I am in San Jose, California, and we love hearing about creative approaches to making the world better, which Betsy, you are certainly giving us. So let's start with one of the stats that came up on one of your slides. In the United States, 9.5 million job openings, 6.5 million unemployed workers. Now that's just raw numbers. That doesn't have to do with professional credentialing and needs. Is that correct?
That's correct. Right. That doesn't factor in a whole variety of factors. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so when you look at the needs in STEM fields, what kind of numbers do we see there in terms of job openings versus the unemployed?
I don't know those right offhand, but I think what you're pointing to is that often the people who are looking for work may not have work experience in the fields where there's growing demand. And
Mhm.
again, we're not going to be the solution to all of those challenges. And we think that part of the exciting thing about growth in industries like solar panel installation or semiconductor manufacturing is that it can, it should, it must open opportunities for people already in the US who have been locked out of opportunities as well. Um, but we also know that workforce development is a long-term strategy and takes uh, a lot of approaches to succeed, and we want to be one of those strategies and one of those approaches alongside other ways to adapt to the changing economy.
Well, thinking about how economies differ all over the country, let alone the world. You mentioned that there are 17,000 people in Minnesota who signed up for Welcome Corps, right? And so if that number isn't highly skewed because of particular issues in Minnesota, I mean, I would assume that you're seeing rather huge numbers from around the country.
I think Minnesota is disproportionately engaged for a
Uh-huh.
lot of reasons. Historically, it's been a place that's welcomed a lot of refugees, and there's also really strong leadership here from an organization called Alight that has really done a great job engaging sponsors. But I think one thing that that points to also is these job openings are not evenly dispersed, and there are often great opportunities and lower cost of living in smaller cities and mid-sized towns. And I think one thing that we hear a lot is that employers feel like they have a lot to offer, but really struggle to attract people who aren't willing to move to a smaller town or a mid-sized town. And that's another place where we offer a great solution. People who are outside the US are moving, and the idea of a place where they can afford to buy a house, afford to live, is actually really attractive.
Well, that makes sense, and especially in that there seems to be so many different aspects of the work Talent Beyond Boundaries is doing. Rory mentions in the chat that he had the experience of helping an immigrant engineer the summer that he turned 13, right? And so if effectively there are community responses to helping refugees integrate and settle and find opportunity, right? Um, is it the case that you have people who are helping, who are really kind of working within networks to welcome people into small towns and similar spots?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of infrastructure being built, including through Welcome Corps, which is, a national consortium and network for the Welcome Corps program. But I also think we're seeing nationwide a lot of state and local government organizations coming together to say, how do we work with chambers of commerce to help them address their workforce needs? How do we become attractive to newcomers to this country and encourage them to come to our state? The state of North Dakota is being extremely progressive in thinking about how to um, be a destination that people really want to go to, because they have some of the most acute workforce demand in the country there. So there's a lot of economic opportunity, pretty low cost of living, and they're saying, like, how do we get people to actually um, get together, and the state government is really leading on that front in conjunction with business. So yeah, I think we're seeing um, really strong networks that are emerging not just from humanitarian interest, but also out of necessity given the state of the labor market.
Well, it sounds like one of the roles that government can play in this is helping reduce the time required. Because that seems to be one of the major challenges. As you were giving this presentation, I'm thinking about, oh my God, there's schools all over the place that
Right.
find themselves in early summer looking for a physics teacher or a chemistry teacher or something like that. But obviously, if they're looking for somebody for the fall, then that's a very different time frame.
Right.
Are there creative approaches to using video conferencing technologies to help accelerate the connection between potential employees and their employers?
So there are many answers to this. Through the Welcome Corps at Work, that program operates through the Refugee Resettlement Program. And one thing that we've seen is that the resettlement timelines have improved, um, and that there's a lot of processing steps for efficiency gains and also increasing automation that's happening there. They were using paper files to do refugee processing until quite recently. So all of that makes things move faster. On the visa side of things, so the STEM Professionals Initiative that I mentioned, there it's a completely artificial barrier, which is the number of visas that Congress has allocated for employers. Many viewers will be familiar with this. There's just an artificial shortage because Congress hasn't legislated to address employment-based visas or global immigrant visas in decades. So those are challenges. There are really innovative programs trying to connect employers with refugees for remote work, which obviously can change someone's life to have meaningful income and a livelihood. Um, we're happy to facilitate employers, hiring someone while they're waiting for relocation, but our work is focused on giving that person the opportunity to relocate into a durable status at a living wage. Um, and of course, we work closely with a lot of other organizations that do other really important work for people who maybe don't want to relocate or who haven't had that opportunity yet.
All right. You mentioned at one point that you work with refugees at all levels of English, and that
Mhm.
brought to mind for me an experience I had early last year of via Zoom mentoring some refugees who were in Canada who had arrived there from Afghanistan and working with them on their English. I wonder if there are programs that are in gear now that take advantage not just of, say, video conference technologies, but of generative AI as a tool
Mm,
for generating lots of English that it would be specific to the field of a person that a person wants to
mm.
go into, something along those lines. What kind of things are you doing to help those who are looking to bring up their levels of English on the way into the United States or Canada?
We have several partnerships with incredible organizations that have generously offered courses or licenses to their resources. So we work closely with organizations like Coursera and Duolingo, and we're able to share licenses with people who are interested in pursuing their improving their English skills. And for many people, English is their third, fourth, fifth language. So it's certainly not a lack of language skill. It's an exposure to English and an opportunity to practice, as you've said. Um, we're also a major thing that we have to think about for many other countries' programs is English testing. So it's one thing to be proficient in English; it's another thing to test as proficient in English. Much like being a lawyer is very different than passing the bar, as some will know. So we also have partnerships with organizations that have offered licenses or have adopted understandings of how to accommodate refugees in English testing if, for example, they don't have a passport, which is a very common situation. So those are both things that our team spends a lot of time addressing. We don't do the English training ourselves because there's many experts who are very good at that. But that's a major area of focus is supporting people to become eligible for a visa where that's a requirement to demonstrate their eligibility and then to be able to communicate with an employer and to meet the employer's needs.
All right. You talked also about the talent catalog software and that was an in-house development. What is it that prompted you to decide that you needed your own system for doing this? I assume there's some basic challenges that aren't met in other systems, but also perhaps particular concerns you have about maybe the privacy of the people involved or the politically tenuous circumstances in which they exist at the moment. Can you speak a little bit to the software package that you use and why you have it?
Sure. And those decisions were before my time, but I think the software was developed I think beginning in 2015 and 2016. And I think a lot of the job matching platforms that we see now have arisen subsequently. But really, I think that the unique thing that the talent catalog does is address the specific needs of a person as a professional and as a refugee. There's lots of platforms that do, immigration law, case management, but that might not address both the humanitarian and the professional aspect, and the fact that a person is outside the United States or the country where they're going to relocate to. So there's just some specific needs that we have. It's also open source, and we facilitate a lot of organizations to use it either in their own job matching activities after training and applicable data privacy compliance, of course. But we also have lots and lots of partner organizations that refer members of their community into the talent catalog as, another potential avenue to access relocation or other like language training services that we've talked about.
All right, last question before we wind down the recording. When you think about the challenges that refugees have trying to get anywhere,
Mhm.
Canada, Germany, Australia, United States, wherever it might be, is there a thing that they can be doing while they wait that is probably the most valuable way to spend their time in order to optimize the chance that they'll find some connection that allows them to resettle and really start a new life?
Absolutely. I think a few things that we see that can be a huge difference. One is looking at job openings. Maybe you're not eligible to actually apply because you don't have work authorization and you need the immigration pathways that we assist with to become work authorized. But just knowing what the requirements are and seeing, opportunities, and if an employer needs for the kind of job you're looking for, has certain expectations, requirements, needs certain certifications. Maybe you can get project management certified while you're waiting. English or other language courses are vital. And then to the extent possible, tracking down documents. Visa processes need documents, and often those requirements are not understanding of the realities that refugees have. So, tracking down a marriage certificate or a birth certificate where possible, or documenting why those aren't available, which is often the case. Those are things that many people can and do as incredible self advocates.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I'll hand it back to you for a final word in just a minute. But for all of you who have taken time to join us, thank you. We know your time is valuable and that you would choose to spend some of it looking for a little inspiration in terms of innovative ways to improve the world around you. And hopefully you find that in this and all of our recordings. You can get to our site by going to rotary.cool. And if you want to see the archive of meetings, which is arranged by the programs, you just click on the meetings link at the very top. And we would love for you to take a good look there. And if you're curious about what it means to be part of a service club, then just let us know. There is a contact on that page. And we love when people contact us to say, I just really was looking for something a little different. And you guys seem to be that. It's true. As an online and asynchronous service club, we're a little different. But we get these fantastic people that we get to talk to through the flexibility of our programs, and it's something very special for us. So again, thank you. Feel free at the bottom of our page, if you are on the Rotary E-Club of Silicon Valley webpage, to leave a comment at the bottom in our forum. If you are on YouTube or a podcasting page, then feel free to follow the instructions there for doing the same. As we always like to do, we hand it back to our speaker for the final word. Betsy, what would you like people to have clearly in mind as they finish the podcast or the video?
Thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. I would really encourage anyone who's interested and who's heard something that you want to connect with further, to join us at talentbeyondboundaries.org. The biggest thing that we're looking for, we would love anybody with skills and passion. We welcome financial resources, but what we really unlocks the opportunity to relocate for a refugee is not someone doing an act of service, ironically, on this Rotary meeting, but is actually a business that says, this person is actually just the best person for this job. That's actually the thing that unlocks an opportunity for a family to relocate to safety. So I really appreciate the opportunity and I'm looking forward to connecting more.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing the story. And for all of you, we will see you next week.